Good evening. Good evening, everyone. There'll be probably a couple of straggly people coming on. I don't mean that in terms of their physical structure. I mean that in terms of straggling people coming on. We'll let them in as we go. This is the 10th of April, which makes tomorrow the birthday of my child. So I've nearly had a baby, and we've managed to keep her alive for a whole year. We fed her every day and changed the sawdust and given her fresh hay and stuff like that. And yeah, she's using her wheel a bit now, and yeah, she's doing really, really well. You might see her in a bit. You might see her. But welcome everyone, and thanks so much for joining us. As per, nothing planned, just a conversation. See where we end up. If nobody has anything to talk about, then I'm sure we can pull something out of the bag. But I'd like tonight to be guided and led by you lot, if that would be all right with everybody. So I'd just like to say, if there's anybody who wants to share anything, has anybody got any questions? Anybody had any insights? I wish Dan was here. I wish he could talk about something he spoke. He sent me a text earlier and I haven't read it properly. But I noticed he read a text. I'd love for him to expand on that at some point. What that meant to him and what he saw. But yeah, has anybody got any insights, any realizations, any questions? How does this fit into this? What about this? I'm going to hand this over to you. I love watching everybody think. So, what could it be? Monk, just pop that light on.
Yeah.
Oh. Cheers. All right. Oh, Wend.
This wasn't my insight, but it really impacted me profoundly because it was a dear friend of mine has been very, very ill. She's had COVID twice. She's got an immune deficiency. She's been basically ill for about 3.5 years. And she's, I don't know, 52, 53, barely left her house, lost a lot of weight, on oxygen, on and off of hospice. And she knows this understanding well. She's in this community. And the other day, she was on the phone with her doctor, the main doctor who really understands her immune deficiency problems. And she's just come through COVID #2. And if you could see the way that she's very wealthy, so she and her husband have been able to barricade their house and not let people in. And if you come in, like they've been able to do all these things because she's compromised. But she got it twice. And so she was talking with her immune deficiency doctor the other day, and she said, Wendy, he started to cry. And she's like, Are you okay? And so he said, I'm just so thrilled for you. He said, Do you know how many people didn't survive COVID once? And with your immune system, you've had it twice and you survived it twice. So in her mind, my friend who knows this conversation well, could be Mrs. Sid Banks, truly, said, For the first time in 3.5 years, I don't think of myself as fragile. I think of myself as resilient. And that has changed everything in her day-to-day experience. And she's got a smile on her face, even with all this sickness. She's an amazing person anyway, but that switch from feeling fragile and needing to be protected to I'm pretty resilient broad. huge. It was so, it was very powerful for me because I'm a nurse, you might have remembered, and to kind of look at, yeah, now that you mention it, she's had like 52 things that would kill, a 300-pound truck driver, and she hasn't died. And she could have, should have, whatever. So anyway, that was just that notion of resilience built in. And if we could just clear the clouds a little and see that more often than broken and fragile, I think that would be a powerful thing for me, for you, for everybody to tap into once in a while.
Yeah, love. Definitely. Definitely. The notion that we are actually perfectly capable of living this life. The notion that we're actually built to live this life. Physically, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, however you want to talk about it. We're built to be. I do think we've lived in a time when the natural immune system has been kind of seen as second rate in a lot of ways, and almost like we've had to create an artificial immune system within ourselves to kind of get through a day. But I feel like with more and more, humanity is coming back to the realization that it has got everything it needs. More and more people are waking up and realizing they have everything that they need to negotiate illness, to negotiate ailments, and to negotiate psychological suffering, and to negotiate difficult and troublesome times. We're starting to stand on our own 2 feet. We're starting to grow up, and I think that's such a beautiful thing for humanity to be heading in that way, and to be standing on our own personal 2 feet, rather than needing people outside of ourselves to prop ourselves up. And it's not to say don't go to the doctors, and there isn't valuable people in the world like nurses, like Wendy here, and amazing people who saved Lucia's life and Jenny's when it came to childbirth. These are valuable people, but we're also totally built to live in this life. We're built to live in this world. Yeah, it's beautiful.
I just had an insight while you were talking. I just had an insight while you were talking, because maybe I'm wrong, but I was reading between the lines of, some people, we don't think that our immune system has been second rate, but actually it's first rate. And, I'm a nurse, and as soon as it was available, I went right out and got taken care of. I got some jabs, as they say in my friends in the UK. I didn't think twice about it because that's just how I've come up in the world, diseases, So anyway, but there are certainly a lot of people in my life that have said I chose not to, because I believe that we're uniquely adaptable, and they might not be in this conversation, but they feel like that might be the wrong direction. So what just occurred to me is, how we say individually we get caught up in, like, oh, and we forget that our thinking is just our feelings are a result of our thought in the moment. We forget, and we kind of go down a rabbit hole. I think whole countries and whole civilizations can get caught up.
Yeah. Totally, love.
Absolutely.
Totally.
And if I can forgive myself for getting caught up, I can forgive my country for getting caught up.
Totally, love. You only have to look at the cultural differences between countries to see that we all live in different sociological norms. And that is completely manufactured from the way that individual people think. Because all society is a group of people, a group of individuals. So every single culture has its own kind of identity, its own kind of way of being. When we were on a walk the other day up in Scotland, we saw these 3 teenagers walking towards us through this woodland, middle of nowhere, and one of them was speaking so loudly, and he was telling us about how he was reading this book by Lao Tzu. And he said, did you know Lao Tzu never once in his life said thank you? This mate's like, What? Really? He said, yeah. He didn't speak English. And then he just carried on walking past us. Jenny said, Jenny just burst out laughing. She didn't hear it. I was like, yeah, I heard it. But it's like we have these cultural identities. We have these cultural identities, and it's quite interesting, like being around people from the Ukraine in the UK, and my family, extended family, is kind of quite heavily tied into some Ukrainian people, and they're culturally very different to ourselves in a lot of respects. But again, within that group of people, you've got all the different types of people. Everybody is an individual. But yeah, our cultures are created from the way people think, and if people believe down a certain line or are taught down a certain line from a young age, you can create a culture. If you can control the narrative, you can create a culture. It's quite easily done. Start teaching people from a young age how to be, and we're British. We're quiet, we're pretty reserved people. And you Americans, bloody hell, you lot are mental, just straight out there, rah, 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 loud and noxious. And I'm kidding. But even like between the North and the South, that people say there's a cultural divide between the North and South of England. It's not even very big. And then you get the cultural difference between Liverpool and Manchester, which is now it's practically the same urbanized area. It's all joined up. There's such cultural differences, but it is literally created from the way people think. Yeah. Some people call it groupthink. But we mustn't forget that within that groupthink is individuals. And everybody within that groupthink is experiencing their own version of reality, even if they may agree on certain aspects. They're still living in their own separate reality. But where the majority of thought goes is created within this world. Where the majority of people think, if tomorrow everybody woke up tomorrow and said, I don't want to buy Coca-Cola or Nestle tomorrow, that's it, I'm done. Two massive companies would collapse, and it would change our whole food structure in the supermarkets. The way we think determines how we act, determines how our country works, determines how society works. We're so powerful. We're such powerful beings. We're the ones that keep things alive, whether we like them, or we keep things alive whether we don't like them. It's us, it's people. But yeah, that notion of forgiveness, love. That notion of forgiveness ends all wars, ends all suffering. It ends suffering. It reduces suffering on the planet, therefore it must amplify love. And I don't know about anybody else, but that's what I want more of on this planet. I want love to come through. We've been divided for too long. It's an illusion. We've never actually been divided. Only in thought, only in mind have we been, and I don't mean divine mind, I mean personal mind, have we been divided. Separation never once took place between us and anything in the universe, or us and spirit, us and divinity. That's why you can't find divinity. You are, everybody's already it. It was never lost. That separation never once took place. It just appeared to. And in that apparent separation was born fear. And when fear was born, things like greed, power struggles, control, jealousies, envies, all your sloths, all that kind of stuff. They were all born from duality, which never actually took place. Never took place in the first place. It was just within our minds, within thought. It was a thought. It was never a true reality. Thanks, Wendlove. Nice way to start. And I send your friend love. Anybody else? When we dramatically got evicted from up in Scotland. Sorry about that, everyone. I ended up knocking on a door, random door, low cancers. I said, do you know of anywhere to stay around here? He said, go and try down there. And try it. It's the old schoolhouse in Dalavich on the side of Loch Awe. Highly recommend it. And lovely lady helped us out. She was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And I gave him a card. I can't even remember why the hell I gave him a card. Maybe she needed my email address or something. I can't remember now. She didn't have a phone or something. I ended up giving him a card. She said, Freedom Thinking, what's that? I said, oh, it's my wife and mine's work. She said, what do you do? So I said, oh, people ask me, what do? I say I talk about the mind. That's because I don't really know what else to say. It's a really kind of, how do you explain the work that we do? I don't know. I say we talk about the mind. People go, oh, you're a psychologist. I go, no, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm just somebody who discovered something about life and decided I wanted to help pass on a message. So I ended up having this kind of conversation with this lady. And out came her granddaughter. And she was cute with a granddaughter. I think she was 11. She was lovely, full of life, bouncing around. And she said, yeah, my granddaughter lives in the village now. She was from down south of England. And she said, yeah, her mum died at the age of 35. This was this lady's daughter. I said, wow, bless her. Bless her. I'm so sorry to hear about that. And she went, don't be. No, don't be sorry. She said, you know what, Dave? She said, it's actually been one of the biggest blessings that's ever happened to me, she said. She said, everything has a silver lining, Dave. And she said, you know what, Dave? She said, I had something happen to me when I was 15 years old. I'd say this lady's in the 60s now. And she said, I buried that. She said, I daren't look at it. I was terrified of it. And she said, but as my daughter was dying, she said to her mum, I need you, Mum. I need you to step up. I need you to help me. And she said, and all these emotions started coming flooding back. She didn't fill me in on any details, didn't ask. You know, I got flooded with all these emotions, and she said all this stuff started coming back, and she said, but you know what, Dave? She said, I realized I could take it. What I thought I couldn't handle, she said, I actually realized I could deal with this. And she said, I dealt with it. Something I'd been afraid of since I was 15 and I'd hidden away from. I put it into the back of my mind and put it in a little box. She said, I had no choice but to look at it. And she said, and when I looked at it, she said, I realized I could take it. And she said, and I freed myself from it. I said, well, you're a shining example of kind of thing that we talk about with our work. Somebody who can take reality, look at it square in the face, and realize they're fine. Like I say, I've got no idea what this lady was actually talking about. She'd never come across the 3 principles or anything like that. She did say to me, she said, I get the impression, Dave, you're one of these people who understands God, but not from a religious context. She said, I think you know the love of it, don't you? And I said, I think so. I've had a glimpse. I've had a glimpse. You know, what we talk about isn't anything extraordinary. I feel like it's so down to earth, everybody can find it. That lady saw past her fears, the things that she thought held her prisoner. And in the exchange, she found God. When she looked through the fears, she found God. What did she find when she found God? Let me be a bit more specific. She found herself. She found her true nature. She woke up and realized the spiritual nature of life. There is a spiritual element to life, and it is all things. So to call it an element really isn't very accurate. And to call it spiritual is to say it's beyond anything that my mind can articulate in a concise way, to speak directly to the fact. Anytime I open up my mouth, or any of us open up our mouths to describe it, we're talking words that have such little impact upon the actual event itself. That's why it's not found within our intellect. Words are food for the intellect. But as we do speak about it, so for some reason, somehow, certain words for individuals, different words for different people, for whatever reason, it can activate something within their being and dismantle an aspect of ego. And every time an aspect of ego is dismantled, there is a shift within the consciousness of that individual. Their reality will change. They will have an insight. And that's why Jenny says this is more of an unlearning than a learning. It's all the things that we think we know that are actually causing us pain. And that thing that lady thought she knew, she didn't know. She didn't know what it would be like to stare it straight in the face, look straight through it and go, shit, there was nothing there. We had the most wonderful conversation. It was the silver lining to being evicted. Everything has a silver lining, Dave. That's what she said to me. Yeah, the silver lining to being evicted was I call it evicted. I'll have to explain myself at some point. I just can't be asked right now. The silver lining was we got to meet this wonderful lady and her family, and they were a truly beautiful family, and they really looked after us. Julie, love, you got your hand up.
I could tell a story. So I came home from Australia recently, and I came home from Australia by myself. And I'm not really a person who's travelled a lot. You know, when I was 24, I moved 6 miles down the road. So travelling home from Australia by myself was a little bit out of my comfort zone. But I was coming home by myself, and I was catching a train up to Sydney, 5 hours on a train. And obviously I felt a bit emotional because I've just left my parents and my 2 sisters. But I was sitting there looking out the window, and I was quite calm, and just started to sort of daydream, a little bit. And in this little daydream I had, I was going home, and I saw that wheel. And planes, big jumbo jets that come from Australia, don't have one wheel at the front. But God, dreams are real, aren't they, when you have them? And this jumbo jet had one wheel at the front, and this one wheel touched down, and I just was so flooded with this massive emotion that I was home with my boys. And I was 35 hours away from them. But it was just so beautiful. It made me cry. But I also knew it wasn't real. And that was beautiful as well, because I could see us completely making it up. And I was sitting on a train by myself, about to do those 35 hours home. And yeah, it was really, really beautiful. And to see that, because it was all the whole thing about the one wheel. When I told my son when I came home, he said, "Mum, if you'd landed on one wheel, you would have fell over and died." but also, so it just was completely crap. and in a way, the crappy bits just showed it was a bloody story. But that emotion that came up was so full on. You could see I'd made it up. And then when I came home, there'd been a little bit of trouble in the family while I was away. And so about 24 hours after coming home, I found myself in a really ugly, ugly place. I was having a different daydream about something really ugly. And I was blessed to see that wasn't true as well. I was making that up. I definitely preferred the first one. Both were a load of shit. Both were just complete stories.
Making it up. Sid Banks said, the dream state, as in the asleep dream state, is closer to the truth than the awake state. Kind of get a feel for what he's talking about there. It's boundless. The dream state in our sleep is boundless. We can travel. We can travel distances without time. We can come home to our kids having not even left Australia. We can feel it. We can experience it as real.
Definitely felt them.
Our dreams are realities. created in the same way as our awake state. Like, we often think of sleep state, dream state, and awake state, dream state as two different things. They're actually the same thing. They're consciousness creating a reality. But in the dream state, sleep state, there's no boundaries. We are truly basking in the infinite, which is our true state. Which is why Sid said it's closer to truth. Because when we're in our awake state, in our intellect, we place all these limitations upon possibilities in ourselves, and we live out of them. When in actual fact, this isn't a Newtonian world like our intellects dream it to be. It's a quantum world, like our dream state, sleep state dream it to be. Which is why in a moment you can take off and fly. Which is why you can walk through a door in your kitchen and end up in Peru. Which is why you can meet people who you've never met and know them. That's closer to truth. We tend to think of our dreams as silly little things. No, our dreams are realities. But it's interesting when you wake up from a nightmare and you go, thank God it was a dream, you see through the illusion of it straight away. But when you're in a nightmare in the awake state and the intellect's involved, our ego's involved, it becomes less obvious that it's just, I say just, that it is a nightmare or a daymare, some people may call them. But what you talked about just then, Julie, you got to wake up from your dream and you got to experience the gratitude and the love. Wow, that was beautiful. Now, shit, I've got a 36-hour journey now. It's funny, isn't it? Then all of a sudden, these judgments come upon it. Oh, but I'm not there. Oh, God, I've got all that way to go.
It was really beautiful. Like the feeling was so. Oh, it was, yeah. I can still now, if I've had a bit of a bad day and go to bed, I can sort of take myself a bit back there and then relax and go to sleep.
That sounds
probably not the way you're supposed to use these things, but
hey, there's no rules. There's no rules. There really isn't. If something helps you go to sleep, go to sleep. No, we're not those people who tell anybody how to live. No, if you having a beautiful memory and reliving it brightens up your moment and lifts your spirit, raises your frequency of being, go for it. Enjoy it. Bask in it. Love it. Be grateful for it. That's beautiful. Hiya, Jay, mate. Sebastian. Thank you, Julie, love.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Can I ask like a general question about insights that may be somewhat related to this making up thing or dreaming, I suppose?
Please go for it. Yeah, go for it, but yeah.
Yeah. It's just like sort of a general question. I think I don't really understand what insights are. Um, I guess we say, I suppose when there's an insight, our reality changes. There's like a new thought, something like that. And I suppose that I do have insights and things like that. But and I guess you could say you go from like a negative feeling or something like that to a positive one, or you go up in your up in consciousness or something like that. Sometimes I ask myself though, um, was it an insight, or am I not still somehow thinking that my experience or my feeling is coming from something maybe out there, because something in my reality changes as I see something new. But then I ask myself, I don't know, am I really seeing through through the illusion that it's all thought, or am I just thinking or seeing that, well, my feeling has changed because that has changed. Something has changed. Do you sort of understand what I'm trying to ask?
Possibly. Can you kind of articulate it another way?
Yeah, yeah. Let me see. I've had this question for a while, and I don't know, you could say like as an example, say I break my phone, like just a simple example, and I'm upset for like 2 days, something like that. But then I have a new thought, like, oh, I needed a new phone anyway, and that me being upset goes away. So is that an insight, or is it just a new thought? But now I'm thinking, okay, not I'm thinking, but I'm in a reality of a new reality, but it's just basically based on still something outside of me.
Yeah, I think I know where you're at with that one, mate. Correct me if I'm offline. Tell me if I'm off.
Yeah, sure.
The way I see it, I I have two kind of subcategories for insight. Which don't really exist. It's just for ease of conversation, which is all the principles really is a is a an ease of conversation to try and describe the undescribable, or to talk about something that really can't be spoken about, with the hope that an individual would have a realization, which is another word for insight. A realization. I realized this today. Do you know what I realized? Do you know what I realized about this plant? You know what I realized about this plant? It's got hairs on it. It's got hairs on it, just like I've got hairs on me. Perhaps me and the plant aren't quite as different as what we might first appear. You know, I mean, we can have realizations, revelation. Another word for it is revelation. Revelations in the Bible, insights, realizations. It's all different words, and I don't know, if you swap the word insight for realization, it starts to become a bit more, less kind of mystical and a bit more down to earth. But the way
Yeah, I use realization a lot.
yeah. So anytime you've had a realization, you've had an insight. But I have two kind of, this is from my own personal experience. I have two kind of subcategories for insight or realization. One of them I say is personal, one of them I say is universal. Now, I could have a personal insight that I know, like when I quit smoking, it was because I had an insight. I had a realization. This does not help you in any way whatsoever, Dave. You are not better off with tobacco. Can everybody hear me? Is this line bad? It's okay. this tobacco doesn't do you any good. And if you want to be a good tree surgeon, you could really do with being fit, and tobacco isn't going to help you be fit. And with that realization there and then, I was feeding a wood chipper. I took my tobacco out of my pocket and I put it through the wood chipper and blitzed it. Last time I ever smoked. So I had personal realization and personal insight. I've had many personal insights about, I don't know, relationships, women. Women were a big thing in my life at one point, and then a personal realization later on just kind of made me see through that and start to see the hurt I was actually causing. But then, so we can have these personal insights, which are great because they help us on in our life. They help us forward in our life. They help us gain greater psychological or physical health. Or perhaps they help us move and transition from a place where we feel stuck into a place where we start to find ourselves feeling more free. So we have this capacity for personal insight. But then what I call universal insights are where we kind of, the ego has got nothing involved in this. Like there is no kind of, we've completely gone beyond the ego in a moment to realize something that is universally true for everyone. And that's what I call universal insight. That which isn't, you see, I could share my insight with somebody who smokes tobacco. I could share my insight and it probably won't do a blind. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Dave. I hear what you're saying. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And roll up and fucking smoke a fag. A fag in the UK, by the way, to people is a cigarette. You have to be so careful. It's a minefield. But when we have universal insight, it absolutely will be applicable to them. You know, when we have, this is why the insight that people start to gain around the three principles, they realize it's actually a universal insight. When people start to gain insight into the nature of reality, into the nature of mind or consciousness or thought, when they start to get insight into it, they realize it's got nothing to do with those words. It has nothing to do with those words. Those words are the most clumsy tools we could possibly use to describe what's really going on. But it's the best we've got in the English language. So the way I see it, insight is a revelation. It's where something reveals itself from within ourselves. And that's the only place an insight will ever come. It may look like external things are catalysts. It may appear like external things are catalysts. Like perhaps I see a poster of somebody's lungs who are looking really, really bad from smoke and I take one look at it and go, I don't want that. But the realization came from within. It always comes from within. We interact with the world. We interact with the world. We're not saying the world doesn't exist. But what we're saying is our entire experience of it is born from within ourselves. And so as we go through life, we are going to start to learn. Any learning that ever takes place is done by our insight. It's done through realization. So when I was doing, nobody's taught you anything. Nobody's taught anybody anything. We've realized everything that we've come to understand. We've realized it. So insight is something that just 1 second, mate. I was just going to mute Jay. Insight is something that takes place. It's built into our spiritual matrix, for want of a better word. It's the infinite. It's drawing a new potential out of the infinite and to make real, to realize an insight inside, to looking within. A view that comes from within ourself, a realization. These are the most, everybody's had it. Jay, sorry, but I was going to just mute you 1 sec again. Everybody's had it. And getting caught up in, is this insight or isn't this insight, can be quite, it can put a lot on people's minds. And I feel like the less we have on insight, the more they appear. The more we can find ourselves just living in the flow of life, the more these insights can drop in. Because they're not found in here. They're not found in, every time I point to my head, I'm talking about the intellect, the ego. They're not found in the intellect. The intellect is a sum total of everything we've already thought, really. It's a belief system. But it comes from the space from which the intellect is born, which is the infinite. As Sebastian, is that in it? Have I muddied the water? Have I made? Does that, any of that make sense? Have I answered your question?
Yeah, I think that was really helpful. Yeah.
Cool, man.
That was good. Yeah,
Cool.
Thanks a lot for that.
No, thank you for asking your question. Awesome question. Awesome question, mate.
Yeah, it's been on my mind for a long time. And I couldn't really answer it. Not really sure. No, but that was helpful. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Insight comes from the power of thought. Now, what the power of thought is, I don't know. It's the magical force for creation. It is the space from which every single thing that materializes in our reality as that we create is born. So as much as I think I can know something about insight, I know nothing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian, mate. Thank you so much. Kel, just 1 second. I just want to ask Jay, because Jay unmuted himself. Jay, did you want to say something earlier on, mate? I can't tell if it's my internet. Is my internet bad?
I think
Can anybody hear me? Our internet's dropping out.
Just all the time.
Hello? Can anybody hear me? Sorry, Jay. Jay, did you have something to say, mate? Did Jay speak? No, all right, okay. Kel.
Yeah, I just wanted to share something that happened. And it's kind of a mixture of what Sebastian has said and a mixture of what that Julia said. I obviously, quite a few of you know on here that I quite often have sort of quite big things happen with my eldest son. And we had a bit of a weird situation go on, which was unpleasant. And I went to bed that night and I was thinking, I had all this, kind of like catastrophic thinking about where this particular incident might lead. My mind was sort of, drawing this picture in the future based on the events that have happened with my son in the past and all of that stuff. And I can drop that quite a lot of the time now, which is great. But sometimes I really get caught up in it and I'm really in the cloud. And I was really, really totally stuck in the grey clouds. I was like, I can't see any silver lining to this at all. I don't feel resilient. I feel shaky. I feel like I can't cope. I feel like, oh my God, just one thing after another, all of that stuff. Anyway, so that night I go to bed and I fall asleep. I wake in the middle of the night with a gun pointing in my face. I believe I've woken up. It's not actually really a gun. With a gun pointing in my face. So in my dream, I wake up and Jesus is passing me a glass of water. And I'm not a big Jesus-y person. I'm not the sort of person to quote Jesus. So it was unusual. It looked like the image of Jesus, like when you see the outline of the Turin Shroud. So it was like, to me, in my mind, that was Jesus. That's an image of Jesus that I have in my mind for some reason. Anyway, it was passing me a glass of water. And I believed at that point I was awake. And then about however long later on, I woke up and I was really thirsty. And for me, the insight in that for me fell after, even though I've still sort of been in the cloud, but this has kind of made me, kind of go through the grey cloud a little bit, is the fact that actually my dream state was telling me, you do have a tendency to catastrophize. Actually, in your dream, you had a gun in your face, you woke up and Jesus was handing you a glass of water. So it kind of, I was really in this place, and even though it hasn't lifted completely, I am aware that was pointing out something to me about my style of personal thinking, that when I'm in the clouds, I can't see any silver lining. In fact, my son has done something that potentially now is going to control his life so much that he might actually have to take those grown-up steps that I haven't been able to encourage him to take. Although I feel really like I don't want him to learn those lessons, because of course the people we love, we don't want them to suffer. So, and I've been really dealing with where's love ending and where does enabling start. I've been on that kind of like boundary and sitting on that fence for quite some time. And so that dream kind of like really said kind of, I don't know, it just felt really quite significant to me at the time, last night or the night before.
Nice, Kel. Nice, love. There's another insight, another means by which insight is born. It's funny you say that, love, because a few days ago, well, it was a couple of weeks ago now, I had a dream about, I was driving out of my village here, Staveley, which a couple of people in this call have been to. And as I was driving out, there's two cyclists side by side, and one of them went to hit my wing mirror. And so I stopped my van, and as he cycled up alongside me and went to say something, I grabbed him by his throat. This is in my dream. And I set off driving with him, holding him by his throat. I was driving along, and then at some point I just threw him against the wall as I was coming out of Staveley. And as he hit the wall, he turned into Rusty. And he fell really badly. Rusty then fell really badly. And I woke up and I was in floods of tears. And I was thinking to myself, what a mad dream. What a mad dream. That was horrible. And for the morning, I felt awful. I felt like I'd hurt Rusty. I'd hurt Rusty. And I'd never want to hurt Rusty. And then I realized that Rusty was a man that I didn't know before that moment. And it felt like my consciousness was telling me in the dream, because consciousness doesn't always speak to us in words. Very rarely does it speak to us in words. It speaks to us in emotions and experiences. It felt like my consciousness was telling me, Dave, treat everybody like the Rusty. Love them. Love the people who attack your vehicle. Love the people you don't see eye to eye with. Because they're all Rusty. The one who you dearly love and forgive for everything. They're all him. And that's the lesson, that's the insight I took from my dream, and it's something that stuck with me. We don't just learn in our awake state. And we don't just experience in our awake state. I'm sure that in our deepest of sleeps, we are having experience that we cannot remember when we wake up. I can't understand how we could possibly be having anything other than that. Because the nature of consciousness is to experience. I don't know anything about beyond my dream states that I can remember. I don't know. Well, I look at Lucia, and Jenny and I often say to her when she wakes up, "Where have you been? Where have you been? Where have we been? What plane of reality were we existing on?" Well, yeah, we can gain insight and realization into all kinds of things through our sleep dreams. We can learn so much if we're prepared to open our eyes and hear, for want of a better word, the message that is encrypted within. Thanks, Kel.
It also kind of remind me of that kind of two ways of saying what if, like, oh God, what if? And then I was sort of the gun in my face part was, oh God, what if? And then the Jesus passing me a glass of water because I was thirsty was like, what if? And it just kind of just lifted me, just that little bit extra, just lifted me for that day, just a bit extra. I don't normally remember my dreams, but just gave me a little bit of lift to not catastrophize quite in the same way that I perhaps might do. Because it doesn't really matter how much history you've got with someone's behavior. If you're going outside in all the time, then that's really gonna affect you. But actually, when you have sort of an insight or a realization, it makes you realize the wealth of knowledge that you have inside you, even though it came to me in a kind of symbol. And I haven't been able to totally not catastrophize. I'm going between catastrophizing and, I'm going between the two what ifs. I'm between both what ifs at the moment. But I know that it's a choice. I think before I didn't ever really know it was a choice to be in that school or that school. It was like, I know I'm teetering on both of them, and I know which camp I want to be in. It depends on which data point I stick right in front of my face as to which camp I'm going to be in. And I'm oscillating at the moment, and I'm hoping that I'm going to arrive in the other camp at some point.
Yeah,
crossed.
It seems like also, Jesus handing you a glass of water is almost like, have faith. And
yeah,
we're such a funny creature. Why do we have such faith in everything going wrong first? What is it about this human being that has more faith in everything going wrong than we do in things going right? What the hell? When we look back at
and also when it's written from a history as well, and that's just a remembering.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're writing the future out of a historic thing that it's actually, we're making it the same by writing it with that same crayon. That's right,
love. But it's like, I don't know if we can start to look back at our history and start to realize that, no matter what hardship and challenge we have ever faced in our life, we've got through it. We did it. We made it.
It's the resilience.
Nobody on this screen nobody this doesn't apply to. When you look back in your life, the hard times, you made it through it. You did it. And I feel like, to look back, going back to Sebastian's point, Keith and Valda Blevins, who share the principles, Keith's a psychologist, they would say hindsight is insight. To be able to look back and realize something, I didn't work out last time I did that. Perhaps I'll try something different. Perhaps I won't speak to that person about that conversation. Perhaps I won't do this. Perhaps I may try that this time, or whatever it be. Or if we look back with hindsight and look back at our previous experience and realize we made it through, you can realize, oh fuck yeah, shit, I made it through that. In fact, I've made it through every single hard thing I've ever come across in my life. What makes this experience any different? You know, and then you can start to get faith in the positive. You can start to have faith in positive outcomes rather than we are buggers for having faith in everything go tits up. And it really has no basis in reality. That fear has no basis in true reality. Because the true reality really has been that, what's that saying? It'll be all right in the end. And if it's not all right, then it's not the end. Everything, somehow, everything works out.
Even if the
Thank you.
path's totally mucky and muddy.
Yeah. We're not living in the past. The past's
No.
past. It's
Gone.
gone.
It's dead.
It's done. It's the dead. Yeah, it's the dead. I often describe it as you've got the dead, you've got the living, and you've got the non-existent. Most people live in the non-existent, the future, or the dead. No, Alex, that was a wrong finger to leave up. Very few people
The
live.
right one.
Very few people live in the livingness of life, the now. Most people are stressing about the future or dwelling on the past. They're living in either the dead or that doesn't exist. So yeah, coming back to the now is, and I was talking to a friend, and I often say this, like, the now to me has got nothing to do with time. People often talk about the now being like the melding of the past to the future, or now being the only time. To me, the now is another word for creator, God, if you want, because it is the only point at which creation is actually taking place, which is why people who find themselves very present have spiritual encounters, and why people write spiritual books about the now, because now is the moment that God is existing, that creator or source is creating. And it always is that way. There is only that ever taking place. The rest of it's illusion. The rest of it is memory or imagination. And starting to see that, you know, suffering is predominantly, if not entirely, based in the notion of time. It's guilt, PTSD, things like that, grief are based in the past. It's not saying there's anything wrong with those emotions. I'm not judging them. I'm just saying they are based in a past. Things like anxiety and worry and stuff like that, they're based in a future. You can't be depressed about what's going on this very present moment because you haven't analysed it yet. It's always based in the appearance of time, which is an illusion. There is no time. There is just an eternal now through which there is constant change, constant creation. Life and death, birth and death are happening now. The only time birth and death take place, they're effectively exactly the same thing. They just appear different. Manifestations of the now. The most powerful place we can find ourselves is in alignment with the now. That's where you truly find life. Become a passerby. Understand you are seeing each moment for the very first and the very last time in the eternal now. Jesus in the Book of Thomas. That. Leave the past alone. The future doesn't have to turn out like the past. It's just karma. It's the only reason why the future would turn out like the past. Karma. But what's karma? It's our belief system. You release karma the moment you have insight. You stop acting in the same way that you believe the moment you realize it doesn't work. Karma's dropped immediately at that point. Karma is a thought. Right, I've got two people with their hands raised, but I want to come back to Jay because I wasn't sure, Jay. Did you want to say something? Sorry, mate. My laptop keeps freezing, and I think then you disappeared.
Can you hear me okay?
Can now, mate. Nice beard.
Right, okay. Cheers, pal. Yeah. Yeah, it was actually. It was, and I've been meaning to. I've been really poor about getting on, and I did want to share something because it did feel like pretty significant.
Please.
But it's a little while ago. It was back when I was in the Lake District in October. I'd gone to for a week of kayaking, and I had this encounter with somebody who, anyway, I'll cut it short. I was having a really nice time away with my oldest mate, kayaking, not wanting, just happy to be on the water, loving it. And we're in this pub, and this guy just got a beeline for me, got right in my face. He was like, he got real, like, you know, pretty aggressive real quick about, you know, I'm like, what's all this all about? And I'd started to mull over in my mind, right, okay, what am I going to do? And I thought, this, do you know what? I thought, whoa, I've got the golden ticket here. Someone's given me the opportunity to vent all my anger, all my pent-up anger over losing my wife. And I think if I hadn't have been in you know, on retreat and sharing some, I think I'd have probably got right into it. But what I did was I had this realization, like really significant, where I was like, right, I have two choices here. I can decide to try and smash the living daylights out of him, or what I could do, I could show him some love, because he was really giving it. Oh, I've been in prison and stabbed, and all my family and everything. And he had, if anything that he was telling me was true, the guy had he's had a shocking time. And in that moment, I had this realization of like, right, the right thing to do is to show him some love. And I showed him it. I gave him it. I empathized with everything he had to say about everything that had gone in his life. And I, you know, and then a little bit, just that little bit was like, right, but I need to let you know something. I said, maybe a year ago, this wouldn't have happened. We'd have been doing something different. And then I thought, right, I'm not sharing anything with you about my life after he's poured out all his, maybe truths, I don't know. So I just told him, you know, I said, a year ago, you'd have asked me, you'd have done that to me. I would have jumped on, I would have, with open arms, I would have loved to have just got battered by you, or you, whatever, which way it was. Says, but because, you know, And I said, so I told him my wife died. And that once I said that, he dropped it all. But I think he dropped it all already, because all I was giving him was, man, I'm sorry for you, mate. I feel for you. And it was like a real wow moment of, sorry, I won't say the F word, but it was like, and then for the rest of that holiday, I was like, wow, it felt something like some real shift had taken place, that whatever anger or at the world or at anything that I had, I didn't need that. And him coming into my space and getting right up in my grill and giving it all this about, I'd have done this to you, I'd have done that, and all this sort of stuff. I was like, it doesn't matter. And that was a massive realization. I think it was a realization moment where I was like, nah, the only thing that matters is love. And I have been meaning to, like, I haven't been very good at getting on, thinking I really want to share this, because at the time it felt like a real shift in how I'd maybe deal with people who I cared about, people who I didn't care about. Whereas even up until that point, even though I was trying to be kinder to people, I still had that underlying sort of resentment, pain, anger, whatever. And him coming right up to me, it just, a bit like you when you went, right, I'm not smoking, boom. It was literally like that. I was right, no, I'm not doing anger. I'm not doing that shit. It's going to be love. So that's, for me, that was like, wow, that's some realization, is that it was a big shifting sort of moment. And I think it came about through sharing, through dialogue, through thinking, through contemplation, all sorts. But it was a massive, like, yeah, I'll have that. That's the way it should be. So it's taken me 6 months to share it, but there you go.
Mate, it was worth the wait. That is certainly worth the wait, mate. There's a lot in that. There
is, but I'll tell you one thing. Even though I can say all that, I'm pretty certain I would have taken him.
You're a big lad.
No. No, to be fair, it was me and my oldest mate, and there was him and there's 4 of his mates. So probably not, but anyway, it's not about that. It really, being serious, it was about this real, like, no, love. It's got to be love. It's got to be love. So, yeah.
More fantastic thing. What a gift. What a gift that man was to you.
Yeah, when he went for the 20 minutes or so, then I'm like really on the fence of which way is this going to go. I'm like, right, okay, yeah, fine. So I'm really getting revved up for what's going to happen. And it was like a switch of like, no, I've got a choice in this, and this is going to go the way I want it. I want it to go. This is the way I really want it to go, not the way some of my feelings are telling me I want it to go. This is really how I want it to go.
Beautiful.
So, yeah.
You exercised your free will.
Yeah, big style. Oh, massively, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't stop grinning for the rest of that. The whole time we were away on the water everywhere, it was like, wow. Everything just got a bit more HD, a bit more like the right word.
Vibrant.
You appreciated everything that bit more. Being cold, your ass wet because you sat in your kayak for 4 hours. Didn't matter. It all just felt so much more real. It was
That's what love does.
Yeah,
Because love is real.
yeah,
Love's the only love's the only true. Love is the true reality. It's the unified state in physics. It's a unified field. It's love. That's why if you approach a situation with love, you have the power of the universe behind you, and you can see, you can have the hardest man stood in front of you, giving it all that. You show him love, and that fear that man crumbled, that was holding that man up, stood upright, the fear that was holding him up, it collapses. Love's the most powerful force that we possess. What a friggin' ace story, and I'm really grateful that you told us that.
and I think I still hold on to that. If I'm feeling a little bit like, with someone, I think for me now that's going to be like a reference point to be able to go back to.
Yeah, nice.
The most reference point, instead of going back to the painful, like lost issues and things. I've now got a new datum. The new datum is that point of where I was like, right, it could have gone a different way, but it didn't. I chose that datum point was going to be love, even for someone I didn't know, even with somebody who was, poking my ego and my masculinity and my whatever, and poking all my scars and wounds of all that stuff. I was like, no, it's going to be love. That's what you're getting. End of. So, yeah, good on him wherever he is. I hope I just think, wow. I hope you didn't then come across somebody else who absolutely battered you. I hope you somehow found through your pain some other way of dealing with it than the way you were trying to deal with it with me. I really do, but yeah, I wonder, but who knows? I hope so. I'd like to think that maybe he's found some other piece, some other way of dealing with his issues. But it helped me big style, and I never saw that coming in.
No, you don't know this is the thing. You just don't know until you're faced with the circumstance. It's like I had a similar experience in South Africa when somebody tried to mug me, and the only thing that came, because I was somebody who, like you, mate, I just wanted to batter people. I wanted to take out my life, the frustration on people, and the only thing that came to me in that moment was put your arm around him. So I put my arm around him, asked him his name. Next thing, he was in my car, and I was buying him food and took him and gave him a hug and just loved him.
I do remember you saying, I do remember when we came on retreat, you mentioning that.
Yeah, and it was a poignant moment for me as well. And I don't know your circumstance, but what you're describing, it's like that. It's where that you have a choice in that moment, and it's going to determine the outcome of something massive in your life.
Could have been. I mean, there was
choose wisely.
I was like, whoa. And I let a lot of that residual other stuff just come to the front, just come to the pie. And I was like, and this is when you're on about realization, it was absolutely crystal clear what the right decision was. In spite of all these feelings that I'm getting, like, yeah, come on then. This is going to be my biggest outlet of all the last 2.5 years. I'm going to smash the living daylights of him, or he's going to batter me or whatever. And it's like, no, it was like, no, that is not the way. That is not the way. In spite of all that storm of feeling, the obvious, clear route was show him some empathy, some love, something. And that wasn't to get out. And I'm like, oh, but you're trying to get out of it. I'm like, you haven't done this bit of dialogue while he's there right in my face. I'm like, no. The right way is give him something other than what he thinks he wants. it was like, wow, that was a big moment, massive.
Yeah. And it ends it instantly. It's like the girl who had her phone stolen that we spoke to in South Africa, and she forgave the people. She showed them love. And like, there was no repercussions. She didn't have to sleep with a knife underneath a pillow or a gun or anything like that. Or she didn't get a house burnt down because of it in the township. And it's like that loving action, that forgiveness. Now you can sit here, your head held high. You've not been beaten up, and you're not under some bloody murder charge. You're not under some charge. You're not in prison. You know, you in that moment of sanity, and in that moment, because love is sanity. When we come from love, we're coming from sanity. If we're coming from fear, we're coming from insanity. If we're coming from ego, we're coming from insanity. And it's like, coming from that moment of sanity, it killed it dead. Killed it. Put an end to it. Stopped. Nothing more. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to stress about. Just gratitude. I know I'd sooner leave a circumstance like that with, and I'm really pleased that you have that experience.
And I got 3 more days kayaking as well, so it was well, it was all good.
Where were you? Which whereabouts were you? Whereabouts in Cumbria were you?
Just near Keswick.
Right. Yeah. I apologise on behalf of my county's people.
No, he was from Manchester.
Oh.
He was a fireman from Manchester.
Was he? Oh, bless
with
him.
his mate. Just getting anywhere, yeah.
Bless
but
him.
no, it was a big, you know, whether, like, say, if you're out, you know, that was a very conscious realization. But and I don't want, you know, if I have more, I don't want them to have to be in these, you know, these moments of like where potential conflict. I want the next ones to be maybe a little bit more gentle, a bit more serene, maybe. But
yeah, I tell you what, though, mate, you won't forget that one.
No, absolutely not.
And they're the most powerful ones.
Yeah,
nobody wants the discomfort, but it's in the discomfort where we truly get moved. It's in the discomfort where we really learn our lessons.
Yeah,
that's when we really learn, is through discomfort. And it's not a rule, but discomfort can really be a catalyst for big shifts.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Hey, Jay, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for sharing.
No worries.
He's a fucking brave man, that lad. I've stood next to Jay.
Well,
Jay's selling himself a bit short, actually. I've got to say something here. I've got to chip in because Jason and I have been friends for quite a while now. We met in unusual circumstances, and obviously he came on retreat with me. But he has been growing that since that retreat, and there's been absolutely loads of times where I've just got, oh wow, that's a massive, you know, oh wow, Jace, that's amazing. And then when this one happened, and I'm pointing out to him all the time throughout this time, wow, that's amazing, that's amazing. And then this big one happens where he has this confrontation with this guy, and that's the one he's really noticed. So it's interesting that you're saying that the big things of but he's been leading up to that. He's been like, the Loving Jay has just been growing and growing and growing. So just want to say, Jay, yeah, that's it. Just putting the record straight.
Yeah. You're right. It's not the first bit. You just don't want to fight with me, so it's a lot easier to grow with you. You know what I mean? But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Kel. Thank you, Jay. I think Wendy drop off. Bless. Wendy's had to go. She sends her love. Helen, you had your hand up, love.
Yeah, my internet's not. I'll put my video on, but my internet's not great. I got a bit distracted now because that was like a really sort of moving moving thing that Jay was saying. So, and I think what I was going to say was not that big a deal. Was oh yeah, it was just, you know, when you were saying about how people have this really sort of strong faith in things going wrong rather than things going right. I'm not sure the distinction's like very important, but like to me, it looks more like, or to me, yeah, for me anyway, it's not so much about thinking things are going to definitely go wrong. It's just about that fear that it might. So, like when Kelly was talking about like catastrophizing and saying like that was like her personal sort of flavor, and I was thinking, I'm not sure that's that personal. I think that like getting lost in the, you know, when you're really, really lost, that's just what human minds do. They get caught up in this could be awful. I don't know, maybe other people are more certain. Like for me, it's more, yeah, I might be totally wrong, but what if I'm not? Like it's the not so nice what if rather than the nice what if. And it's like
Yeah.
that, and then it's that fear that we're not big enough to, or strong enough or whatever, to cope with whatever happens. Like not having that faith that you know that we are made for life.
Yeah.
Maybe it is the same as what you were saying actually. Then it's like, what if it goes wrong? And then if it goes wrong, then I know it's going to be a disaster. So maybe I've just said the same as what you were saying.
Don't know. I just find it fascinating. Just an observation, not a judgment, just an observation. I find it fascinating how easy it is for us to have faith in everything going tits up. And I just think, you know, my personal history has been, oh, it's a bit bonkers from throughout time. Like ended up in prison and stuff like that wasn't something I ever expected for my life. But I wouldn't erase it from my history. It's becoming really useful, especially working with people doing this line of work. It wasn't very useful during tree surgery times. It was crap. It had no relevance whatsoever, apart from I nearly got a nickname, Cell Block Dave. But instead they chose Fag Dave because I used to smoke apparently. So that was my nickname for throughout the tree surgery times. But yeah, everything has a value. It's like Jay with that man coming up and threatening him and being aggressive, and him having the opportunity of his lifetime to unleash. And it's like such silver linings in it. You know, I'm guessing it wasn't comfortable for Jay at that point. You know, it wasn't one of his times he would choose to relive over and over again. Maybe the experience afterwards of becoming aware of the magnitude of that event and the profound impact it would have upon his life, and not just his life. The profound impact, I'm guessing it may have had on that man's life, you don't know. But certainly the profound impact it's had on my life, just listening to him talk about it now. Because I really relate to Jay. I relate to Jay's story. Me personally, that's kind of where I've come from as well. So I really relate to that. So but the power of love has always won. Power of love has always won. You know, we've had wars, they've always been brought to an end. Yes, people have lost their lives, it's come with its tragedies, but each one of those has its own story. Like the lady who, when speaking to her when we got moved out of this house in Scotland, she told me about her daughter dying at the age of 35, and I said, I'm so sorry. She went, no, don't be. Every cloud has a silver lining, Dave. You know, it's like we can look for the negative or we can look for the good. We can choose to see everything that's wrong in the world, or we can choose to start to be more in alignment with the good, positive. Those that choose to live their lives, and they don't realize it's a choice, but it is a choice because nobody else is thinking their thoughts for them. Those that choose to think down the negative, they're going to have a miserable life. Those that choose to be afraid of life, those that see threat round every corner, the anxious people in this world, God bless them. I've been one. It's like we can choose to live there, or we can choose, and people say you don't have choice. You do have choice. You do have choice. There is a divine gift in this universe, and that gift is Source Creator. And Source Creator makes everything out of itself via its own will to do so. Everything that exists in this world that we see is the will of something. Something has willed there to be trees that breathe in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen. Something has willed the trees to have flowers that the insects can pollinate and symbiotically work together. Something has willed the existence of humanity being on this planet. And even if we were seeded from another planet, which I'm not against, something willed those beings that seeded. Something willed the sun into being. Something willed the chlorophyll to interact with the light from the sun in order to create growth, to create the tree, to produce oxygen, to feed the insect world, to blah, 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 blah. So this is done via something's will. And something has willed matter into being. But that willed the matter into being, willed everything into being from itself. So therefore, everything is the will of Source. So everything that is the will of Source is, by virtue of the fact that it is the will of Source made out of itself, has the will of Source within itself, the ultimate free will. Human beings, we all have the ultimate free will within ourselves. The problem is we believe, and we have the ability to believe and to have faith. And that we give more attention to grows. If we give more attention, more of our will, we hand more of our will over to negative, we will experience more, and we will get evidence for why we should be fearful. Well, because I found evidence for it. Of course you did. You went looking for it. And whatever the mind goes looking for, it will create. Wherever we point our consciousness towards, whether it be a watch, a pen, or a spoon, spoons there, our mind will start thinking about it. Where we point our focus, our attention, like Jay in that moment, I have a choice. Where do I focus my attention? Do I focus my attention on the opportunity of a lifetime right now? Or do I focus my attention on something different? Do I focus my attention on love? Do you know what? I know what's right here. I'm going to go with love. Okay, I'm going to focus my attention on love. I focus my attention on love, and out comes that outcome. There is no such thing as no free will. The majority of the time, we're just working on autopilot. Just being led by every thought that bubbles up that we create.
It's funny because I had can you hear? I don't know if it's me or you.
No, it'd probably
Okay.
be. I can hear you.
When you said about relating to Jay's story, I really related to it, but in a very different context. You might remember because I think I spoke to you about it on a one-to-one when I was having trouble getting my daughter to sleep, so it wasn't like a big dramatic thing where anyone was going to get beaten up. She was going a bit wild, and I didn't experience the choice actually. It just suddenly it was just my mind just changed, and suddenly I just had this thought, just love her. So I'd gone from getting really annoyed with her and making stupid threats about how she wasn't going to be able to open her presents or whatever, because I think it was around Christmas. it was just, yeah, it just kind of struck me because when you said about, oh, I can relate to that because I'd had similar circumstances, and I was thinking, well, I really haven't had similar circumstances, but actually, yeah, I can really relate to that. Seeing it differently, although I can't say I always see it like that still with my kids. It's not like
Yeah,
it's totally like changed how I parent my kids, but yeah, it was really nice to hear that story, and because it really reminded me of that time when I had that big, I guess I would call that an insight because it just came out of nowhere.
yes, look, and I remember you telling me
Yeah.
that. The thing that doesn't have a choice is the ego. And anytime we are finding ourselves with no choice, you can pretty much guarantee you are in ego in that moment. Ego has no power, therefore it can't make a choice, it can't make a decision. Decisions can be made from ego, but it can't do anything. Our true self is the only space through which decisions can be made, because our true self is the space from which the infinite comes through. All the potentials, all the possibilities are born from within ourself, our true self. The ego is the sum total of everything we believe. We think and we believe. Therefore, it has no power. It's a creation. And that is created has no free will. This pen cannot be anything other than a pen because it's created. The ego is a creation. This is creation. It has no power. The ego has no power other than that we grant it. It's us, it's our self that grants the ego, our belief system, the power. Which is why in many cultures and many kind of spiritual teachings, they would talk about starting to question your own mind, questioning your ego. Because when you start to question it, you start to realize just how we just run these programs. It's not that free will doesn't exist, we're just not exercising it. We're just going with the program of, well, I've always thought this way. But did you know you can think another way? No. But of course the individual can think another way. I have to become aware sometimes how lazy I am being with my mind. Sometimes I have to have that realization, that insight. Yeah, it's, you know, whether we live a life of love from love, or whether we live a life from fear, there's nobody else making the choice. Nobody else making the choice. There's nobody else dreaming our dream for us. We are the ultimate free will. We are made of that. That is the ultimate free will because we are it. Sid said, you've got freedom of thought. Thought is infinite. There is no end to thought. No end. The infinite is within our being. Our being is made from the infinite. And it's through thought that reality is born. Therefore, this reality that we encounter has infinite possibilities. And when these infinite possibilities show up in many aspects of the world, they're seen as kind of delusions or woo-woo or something like that, or non-scientific. And we try and encapsulate it and collapse it and make it so it's materialist. It's never been materialist. It's always been spiritual. It's always been quantum. I learned the other day that the speed of light fluctuates. and they've registered the fluctuation in the speed of light. It's not by a great deal given the speed of light, by up to 20 miles an hour. But so this poses a massive problem for science that has the speed of light as a constant, because it's from that constant then we can do equations and we can work out how this universe works. But the speed of light fluctuates. And I listened to a talk, and this fella said, "Yeah, but we've solved the problem of the fluctuating speed of light." And he went, "Okay, what did you do?" "We capped it." "What do you mean you capped it?" "Well, we capped it." How can you cap the speed of light? It was just done for our convenience, so we can create mathematical formulas and get paid and look clever and lie to ourselves. No, there's infinite potential. But we're so good at convincing ourselves that we're right. And we're so good at convincing ourselves that we're limited. We're so good at lying to ourselves. Every time we're in ego, we're lying to ourselves. We're lying to the world. Every time we go into fear, we're lying to ourselves. We're lying to the world. Every time we go into anger or anything like that, again, it sounds like I'm really casting judgment. I do it. But I'm lying to myself. That's not the way the world is naturally geared. The world is naturally made of love. The world isn't made of fear. We're not made of fear. Fear is something we experience, something we create. However, we don't create the power of love. I don't even know what love is. I've got no idea what love is. I can experience it as a feeling state, but that's not a description of what it is. And anybody who has an experience of going beyond this reality into perhaps they have a near-death experience or something like that, they will talk about this love that cannot be spoken about, but is the source of all things. And everybody will find that out. The majority of people, I believe, before they die. Oh, well done, Jen. Right, I don't know what that is, love. Jen, do you want to explain what that is on the chat? If you can.
It was from Wendy.
Oh, it's from Wendy, was it?
She has talked, apparently on group, she talked about it. So there's the link.
Yeah, she did, love. That's right. Brill. There's the link if everybody can see that in the chat box. And Julie has said, can we end by sending love to those who need it tonight? I think that's a really beautiful idea. Jen, I'm just going to put you on mute because you've got a really bad interference.
Lucy is breathing down the phone.
Yeah, I don't think it was that. I've really enjoyed tonight. And yeah, Julie's asked if we could send love out as a group. Anybody who wants to leave, you're welcome to leave. But thank you so much for joining us. We're going to try and do it again next week, next Monday. We've got a couple of retreats coming up, by the way. We've got one down in Devon. And we have got one in the Lake District with Linda Pettit, Dr. Linda Pettit. There'll also be Bill Pettit zooming in. So that's going to be an in-person one with Linda Pettit. Linda Pettit's going to be there. Jenny, myself, and my sister. My sister, she's going to be reading some of her channeled messages and talking about that. And she's magical stuff that she comes out with. So if anybody's interested in these, I haven't got the dates in my mind right now, but get in touch. Yeah, the Linda Petty one's in the Lake District. It'll be in Ambleside. In Devon, it's Jenny and myself. And Jen, oh, she's gone. Okay. Yeah, just I'll put them out on the WhatsApp group. And people, if anybody's interested, you're welcome to come. But I'll just say thanks for tonight, and we'll stop recording, and then we'll do our sending love. Thank you, everyone.